Imagine a lone survivor emerging from the smoke and ash of a wagon train massacre, desperate and clinging to the last thread of hope. Then a mysterious Dakota hunter appears, driven by his own harrowing losses, and chooses to save her instead of leaving her to an unforgiving frontier. Together, they face relentless outlaws, hidden terrors, and the biases of an entire region on the brink of war. What unfolds next is a story of unexpected alliances, grit, and the will to survive against impossible odds. Want to find out how two strangers learn to trust each other when nearly everything stands in their way? Stay with us until the end. If pulse-pounding action, heartfelt moments, and the promise of justice sound like your kind of tale, subscribe to our channel now. We have many more epic frontier stories in store. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update, and settle in for one wild journey on these untamed plains. In the autumn of 1867, Anna Caldwell believed she was on the cusp of a new life. Her father, Henry Caldwell, a soft-spoken teacher from Ohio, had sold everything they owned for a chance at a fresh start in the distant territory of Wyoming. They joined a wagon train of 18 settlers, families with young children, a few single men hoping to stake land claims, and two older couples who dreamed of building a general store. Each day, the group traversed the vast sweep of the Great Plains, lulled by the steady roll of wagon wheels and the endless expanse of grass. Anna, wearing a faded blue calico dress, would often walk alongside their wagon to stretch her legs, collecting kindling for the next meal's fire. Henry had told her the trip would be long but worth it, an adventure in which they would leave behind old sorrows. She believed him wholeheartedly, never suspecting the violence that would tear apart their dreams. On a frigid dawn just days shy of mid-October, Anna's world changed forever. She had wandered a short distance from the main camp to gather twigs for the breakfast fire. The pre-dawn hush felt oddly thick, as though the grass itself held its breath. Suddenly, the thunder of gunshots ripped through the stillness. Anna froze. She dropped the wood in her arms, heart hammering, and crouched low in the dewy grass. In the dim light, she saw silhouettes against the morning sky. Men, but not any she recognized, moving among the wagons like wolves among sheep. Shouts of warning rose, cut off by more gunfire. Horses whinnied in terror, and the settlers' lanterns flickered, casting wild shadows over the grim scene. In a matter of moments, screams overtook the soft murmurs of dawn, painting a horrific tableau that Anna would carry in her mind forever. She fought every instinct that screamed at her to run back and help. Her father was somewhere in the midst of that chaos, as were the people she'd shared jokes with only the night before. But Henry's lessons on caution and survival overrode blind panic. Stay low, hide if you can't fight. Her body reacted before her thoughts fully formed, and she huddled close to the ground, creeping slowly toward a wagon that had toppled on its side. From beneath this makeshift shelter, she witnessed the unthinkable. Masked riders, clearly white men, beneath their false braids and painted faces, methodically shot anyone they found. They stripped wagons of valuables, rummaged through crates and barrels, and spoke English laced with harsh curses. One man spat, "Don't leave a nothing behind. Make it look like Indians did this." Another laughed in a coarse voice, "Next time we keep a woman or two for ourselves." Bile rose in Anna's throat. Her father had always insisted that while the frontier was dangerous, people of all backgrounds wanted peace more than violence. The savagery she witnessed now felt like a horrifying betrayal of that faith. Breathing shallowly to avoid drawing attention, she clutched the small hunting knife Henry had given her. But there was nothing she could do against so many armed attackers. After what felt like an eternity, but was likely only minutes, the masked men mounted and rode away, carrying sacks of stolen goods, leaving behind a silent tableau of destruction. She waited until she was certain they wouldn't return before daring to crawl out. Her gaze swept the carnage. Bodies lay motionless, their faces gray in the early light. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to remain calm. She recognized Mr. and Mrs. Turner, the elderly couple who had dreamed of a small shop, lying lifeless by their wagon. A few steps away, she saw what remained of the younger Henderson family. Worse yet, she found Henry Caldwell near the smoldering remains of a wagon. The eyes that had once sparked with humor were now unseeing, his body sprawled in a posture of final surrender. Anna wanted to scream, to collapse in despair, but she knew if she did, she would not survive. Trembling, she collected a half-filled canteen, a wool blanket, and her father's knife. Then, with tears slipping down her cheeks, she turned her back on all she had known and staggered into the trackless prairie. 3 days of wandering left Anna delirious with hunger and thirst. She trudged in no particular direction, guided only by the vague plan to find a settlement or a soldier's fort, any sign of safety. Nights brought freezing winds that cut through her dress and coat, forcing her to seek shelter in shallow ravines or beneath thorny shrubs. By day, she followed the sun, though her sense of direction faltered in the monotonous sea of grass. Each step grew more painful as blisters on her feet burst and reformed. The meager cornmeal she had salvaged ran out on the second day, and she rationed the last mouthful of water so carefully that her lips cracked in thirst. Late on the third afternoon, she spotted a faint trail of smoke rising against the overcast sky. Relief battled with caution in her mind. Smoke meant people. People meant help or new enemies. She debated with herself, exhaustion and desperation eventually tipping the scales. Even if the camp belonged to the very raiders who had destroyed her wagon train, she figured a quick death might be preferable to a slow one out here. With renewed determination, she limped toward the source of the smoke. As she crested a small rise, her heart plunged. The men by the campfire were indeed the same outlaws. She recognized one of the voices, the same coarse laughter. Panic flooded her system as she hid behind a cluster of rocks, close enough to hear snippets of their conversation. "Next time, we won't leave any survivors," one man bragged, tossing a bone into the fire. Another snickered in agreement. Anna's grip on her father's knife turned her knuckles white. She had to leave. Now. Carefully, she inched backward, hoping to slip away unnoticed. That was when she heard a twig snap beneath her boot. Her pulse thundered. Immediately, two of the men broke from their circle, muskets raised. One called, "Hey, who's over there? Show yourself." She froze, tears pricking at her eyes. If she bolted, they'd shoot her in the back. If she stayed, they'd see her cowering behind a rock, her muscles locked. Then in a blur, an arrow whistled through the air, striking the near outlaw in the chest. He collapsed with a ragged gasp. Shouts and curses rang out as the remaining outlaws scrambled for cover, scanning the distant rocks for the unseen archer. Anna remained paralyzed until a strong hand grabbed her from behind, clamping over her mouth. Terrified, she struggled, certain she'd been captured. Then a low voice spoke in English, inflected with an accent that hinted at a different mother tongue. "Be still, or they'll find us." The speaker pulled her back, forcing her into a crouch. Dazed and desperate, she obeyed. If he'd meant to harm her, he wouldn't have bothered with stealth. Bullets ricocheted off stones as the outlaws fired wildly at the hidden attacker. Another arrow soared overhead, sending the bandits diving for cover. She let herself be guided across the rough ground, half running, half stumbling. At last, they paused behind a ridge out of direct sight of the outlaw camp. Her captor released her but stayed crouched. Anna whirled, knife raised, and faced the man who had intervened. He was lean and broad-shouldered, skin bronzed by sun and wind. A single raven-black braid fell down his back, partially hidden by a wide-brimmed hat. A bow was slung across his shoulders beside a rifle. His eyes, dark and cautious, swept over her in silent assessment, and he spoke in that same low voice. "You're alone from the wagon train?" Anna could only nod. She could still hear shots echo from the outlaws' camp behind them, but the gunfire was growing distant. The man introduced himself as Samuel Redleaf, Dakota by birth, but with more years on the plains than in any one village. He gestured for Anna to follow him deeper into the scrubland, away from the bandits. Every cell in her body rebelled at trusting another stranger. Yet he had clearly saved her from discovery, and for that, she owed him her life. Tightening her grip on the knife, she forced her trembling legs to move. They walked until the sky had dimmed into the deep blue of evening. Soon the weight of her fatigue pressed on her like a physical force, and she succumbed to unconsciousness, letting Samuel half carry her the final stretch to safety. Anna woke beneath a narrow overhang of rock, a tiny fire crackling at her side. Her cloak was spread over her like a makeshift blanket, and she realized with a start that she still clutched the handle of Henry's knife. Across from her sat Samuel Redleaf, head bowed as he inspected an arrow shaft by the firelight. He glanced up at the rustle of movement, and his expression conveyed measured wariness. "You've been out most of the night," he said quietly. He spoke English with a certain crispness, perhaps from interactions with traders or the army. His gaze flicked to her meager belongings. Your canteen's empty. I'll find water when the sun is higher. She tried to speak, but her throat felt parched, and a hacking cough came instead. He passed her a water skin. Drink carefully, he warned, and she obeyed, grateful for even a few sips of lukewarm water. I'm Anna, she managed once her voice returned. Anna Caldwell. Samuel Redleaf, he reiterated. And those men back there, bad men who kill and blame others. Not the first time I've seen their work. In the flickering firelight, Anna noticed the subtle lines at the corners of his eyes, the scar along his jaw, the intricately beaded medicine pouch at his hip. She had grown up hearing stories about the natives on the frontier, most of them spun with fear and prejudice. Yet nothing in those tales had prepared her for the reality of this man who had saved her twice over. First with an arrow, then guiding her to safety in the wilderness. She recounted what had happened, the masked raiders, the destruction of the wagon train, and how they left behind false evidence to implicate the Dakota tribes. Samuel listened without interruption, though his jaw tightened at intervals. They do it often, he said, stirring the fire with his stick. Then the army punishes my people, thinking we attacked settlers. More blood spilled for a lie. The quiet rage in his voice resonated with the anger simmering within Anna. Her father had taught that honest folk of any race had more in common than what divided them. Now she was face to face with the ramifications of greed and cruelty that stoked hatred on both sides. What will we do? She asked. A faint shrug rolled across Samuel's shoulders. You're a witness. They'll hunt you down if they realize you're alive. Me, they already want to hang for crimes I never committed. He tapped the tip of his arrow against the stones. I've been tracking them for weeks, hoping to gather proof. Perhaps you are that proof. Anna bit her lip. The weight of the situation loomed. She was alone, but not truly, for now she had a reluctant ally. Where can we go? Northwest, he replied. My people's summer camp, if they're still there. Or we might find soldiers at Fort Chamberlain. But that's a day's journey in open land. If the outlaws spot us first, we won't stand a chance. They fell silent. Outside, the wind carried the distant howls of coyotes. Anna's eyes stung with tears she refused to shed in front of this near stranger. She thought of Henry, of her father's gentle smile, of how he would have implored her to stay brave. She drew in a shaky breath. I'll go wherever you think we can survive, she finally said. I don't want to die out here, and someone has to speak the truth. Samuel nodded as if acknowledging her resolve. He offered her a strip of dried meat from his small stash. Then rest a bit more, he told her. We move when the sun is up. Despite her exhaustion, sleep did not come easily. She dozed fitfully, dreaming of masked faces and gunshots that rang in endless echoes. Each time she bolted awake, she found Samuel still there, silent and watchful, tending the fire or scanning the horizon for threats. For better or worse, their fates were now intertwined, bound by tragedy and a faint, shared hope for justice. They set out at dawn, forging a slow but steady path across rolling hills dotted with scraggly pines. Samuel moved with a natural agility that Anna envied. He scarcely seemed to leave footprints. In contrast, she slipped often, her worn boots ill-suited for the rocky terrain. Whenever she stumbled, he steadied her with a quick hand beneath her arm, then released her just as swiftly. Though the gesture was practical, she couldn't deny feeling a twinge of gratitude that someone cared enough to keep her on her feet. By midday, they reached a winding creek swollen from recent rain. The water's chill numbed Anna's ankles as they forded carefully, but washing away their tracks was worth the discomfort. Twice, Samuel froze mid-step, head turned like a listening fox. Each time, he led them swiftly into dense underbrush or behind a rocky outcrop. Only once did Anna glimpse the reason, a pair of horsemen on a nearby ridge, scanning the plains. She recognized the same tattered jackets and rough manner of Jackson's gang. Her heart hammered in her chest, but they remained undetected thanks to Samuel's caution. As dusk approached, they made a small camp in a hollow sheltered by boulders. A drizzle began to fall, soaking the branches that might have served as firewood. Reluctantly, they decided to keep any fire low to avoid attention. While Anna laid out the damp blankets, Samuel ventured off to gather herbs. He returned carrying slender roots and a handful of leaves. For your feet, he said, nodding at the evident limp in her gait. He crushed the leaves into a paste with a flat stone and gently applied it to her blisters. The relief was immediate, a cool tingle that eased the raw pain. "Thank you," she murmured, touched by his unexpected kindness. He merely grunted acknowledgement, as though uneasy with gratitude. Soon the drizzle turned into a steady downpour, and they huddled against the rock face. Night descended early behind the curtain of rain, and Anna's thoughts wandered to the outlaws. "You said you've been tracking them. Why?" Samuel's eyes glinted in the wavering firelight. "They killed many from my band last summer, blamed it on a Dakota raid to stir the army's wrath. I lost an uncle, a cousin." His voice grew thick, "and no one believed my people when we said we had no part in it." Anna's breath caught. "I'm sorry, that's—" He shook his head, cutting off her sympathy. "It's the frontier. Men like those outlaws profit from fear. They raid wagon trains, homesteads, even native villages, then watch the army wage war on the wrong side. Meanwhile, they trade stolen goods at unscrupulous outposts. I want to see them stopped." Lightning flickered, illuminating the harsh angles of the boulders surrounding them. Anna bit her lip, remembering how these same men had robbed her of Henry, of her entire future. "I want them stopped too." A lull in the storm gave her the courage to add, "You must think me weak, complaining about a few blisters in the cold." Samuel raised a quizzical brow. "I've seen plenty of so-called strong men crumble under half the strain you've endured. You're not weak. You just need time to learn." That statement, simple as it was, buoyed her spirit. She realized with the start that she trusted him. The next day she vowed she would do better, keep pace, complain less, prove that she could survive in this unforgiving land. They woke to gray dawn, the rain now just a persistent drizzle. The world glistened, raindrops clinging to grass and pine needles. Samuel scouted ahead while Anna doused the tiny fire and packed their belongings. Each day blurred into another. Hours of wary travel, short rest stops, constant vigilance. She found herself watching Samuel with unabashed curiosity. He wore elements of both cultures, a wide-brimmed hat, breeches, and sturdy boots, alongside a braided hair tie and a beaded pouch. He moved effortlessly between his rifle and bow, sometimes preferring the silent arrow to avoid alerting potential pursuers. On the fourth day, they ran out of dried meat, forced to catch rabbits and gather edible roots. Anna managed to snare one small rabbit herself, an achievement that brought her a quiet smile. Samuel skinned and cooked it, dividing the meager meal into equal portions. An unspoken camaraderie formed. They each recognized the other's determination to keep going, bound by the necessity of staying alive. "Your father taught you to handle a knife?" Samuel asked one evening, nodding at the blade on Anna's hip. She recalled Henry's patient lessons, how he insisted she learn the basics. "He wanted me to be safe," she said, swallowing back the memory's sting. "I guess this is what he meant." Samuel only nodded, but in his eyes she could sense he understood that grief was a wound that never fully healed, one you simply learned to carry. It was on the fifth day that their luck turned again. They had just crested a ridge in search of a known water source when a low, furious growl froze them in place. From behind a stand of willows emerged a massive brown shape, an enraged grizzly. Some quirk of fate had the beast crossing their path at precisely the wrong moment. Samuel raised his bow and Anna fumbled for her pistol, adrenaline surging. The bear roared, charging faster than she believed possible. Samuel's first arrow struck deep in its flank, but it only staggered the animal. The second arrow missed as the bear lunged forward, claws raking the air. Anna stumbled backward, heart pounding. Samuel tried to sidestep, but the bear's paw caught his shoulder, sending him sprawling. Without thinking, Anna fired her pistol. The shot echoed off the rocks, and the bear jerked, a dark bloom appearing on its neck. It collapsed mere feet from Samuel, heaving its final breath. Then silence, broken only by Anna's ragged panting. She rushed to Samuel's side. Blood soaked his torn shirt where claws had slashed him. He tried to push himself up, wincing. "You saved me," he managed. She cradled his head, relief mingling with disbelief. "Are you all right? Can you walk?" Gritting his teeth, he nodded. "Not a mortal wound, but it needs tending." His gaze shifted to the bear's carcass. "We'll take what we can. Meat, fur, claws. This was no ordinary kill. The spirit of the bear is strong." Anna stared at him, still shaking. I've never killed anything so big. She wanted to retch, but the shock was giving way to a strange clarity. That's how it is on the plains, he said after a moment. Kill or be killed. Working together, they butchered what parts of the bear they could use. Anna's stomach churned, but she forced herself to help, following Samuel's instructions precisely. Each step felt like crossing a boundary she didn't know existed. By the time they finished, her hands were slick with blood, and the air reeked of raw flesh. But they had fresh provisions and a pelt that could be invaluable. That night, they made a hasty camp. Anna insisted on cleaning Samuel's wound. She heated water in a small tin pot and used clean strips of her petticoat to wash away dirt. Samuel hissed but remained stoic. She recalled the rudimentary nursing skills she'd picked up in Ohio, assisting in a charity hospital. Though she was no expert, she'd seen enough to know that infection could kill quicker than a bullet. Once finished, she tore more fabric to bandage him. He studied her with a newfound respect. You handle yourself better than most men I've known. She blushed under the unexpected praise. I only did what needed doing. That is enough, he said simply. Then he placed the bear's claws, strung on a cord, in her hands. These belong to you now. You ended its life. Wear them if you wish, or keep them. Bear spirit is strong medicine. Cradling the makeshift necklace, she felt something shift in her chest. Once she would have balked at the idea of wearing trophies from an animal, but the frontier had reshaped her perception. Everything here was about survival. Thank you, she whispered, her eyes meeting his. She saw in them an understanding of how both had crossed some invisible threshold, forging a bond that was more than the sum of its parts. After a sparse meal of cooked bear meat, both fell silent. The new night sky glimmered above them, serene as though the day's violence meant nothing. Anna found herself shivering, not just from the chill. In the space of a week, she had lost her father, endured a massacre, and killed a bear. She was both numb and hyper-aware, uncertain how to reconcile these polarities. But she sensed that the path she walked with Samuel Redleaf was leading her further from the innocent girl she had once been, into a life that required fierceness just to exist. Somewhere in the darkness, wolves howled. For the first time, Anna did not shrink at the sound. She understood that each creature here, be it wolf, bear, or human, battled daily for its place in this unforgiving world. The next morning, the weather changed. A chill wind tore across the plains, carrying flecks of sleet. Samuel pronounced it a sign that winter was not far off. We must reach my people soon, or find shelter in a fort, he said. His bandaged shoulder made each movement painful, yet he refused to slow their pace. Anna admired his determination. Stubbornness, really, though she also worried about the cost to his health. By midday, the sun had broken through the clouds, revealing rolling terrain that sloped toward a wooded valley. As they approached, Samuel pointed out thin trails of smoke, barely visible against the skipun. That could be my band, he said, or it could be others. We approached carefully. They circled wide, moving through clusters of trees. At one point, Samuel motioned for Anna to crouch behind a boulder while he scouted ahead. He returned a quarter-hour later with a mild grin. It's my people's summer camp. A scout recognized me. They'll let us in, but... His expression turned serious. You're a white woman, some lost kin to raids blamed on your people. They might not welcome you. Anna's heart fluttered. I understand. If they'd seen what happened to my wagon train, they'd realize I'm not their enemy. Words rarely convince as strongly as action, Samuel said. Stay close to me, speak only when spoken to, and do not show fear. My father was well respected before he died. His name still carries weight. They descended a narrow path flanked by pines, their branches swaying overhead. Upon reaching the valley floor, Anna saw about 30 lodges arranged in a semicircle. Children paused in their play to stare, women halted their work at the fires, and men, some with bows or rifles, approached to investigate. Samuel raised a hand in greeting, calling out to them in Dakota. She caught only a few words, but the tone was reassuring. Still, many eyes zeroed in on Anna. She felt self-conscious in her patched-up, blood-stained attire, clutching a pelt in one hand and a pistol in the other. The memory of the wagon train massacre hung over her like a warning. It seemed these people, too, carried memories of tragedies inflicted by those who looked like her. A tall man with silver strands in his hair emerged from the largest lodge. Chief Silver Eagle, Samuel later informed her. The chief's gaze swept over Anna, then lingered on Samuel's bandages. He spoke rapidly in Dakota and Samuel responded in kind. She recognized her name interspersed with terms she didn't know, repeated in various intonations by the onlookers. The tension in the air was thick enough to taste. Chief Silver Eagle finally switched to English. Samuel Redleaf says you were attacked by men who pretend to be Indians. His voice held a rough accent, but the words were measured and clear. Is this true? Anna swallowed hard. Yes, they slaughtered my wagon train. They blame your people for what they do. A mutter rippled through the crowd. One older warrior with a cloudy, scarred eye stepped forward, scowling in suspicion. He shouted something in Dakota. Samuel grimaced. That is One-Eyed Bear, he murmured to Anna. He says you could be a spy, spreading lies. She bristled but forced herself to remain calm. I have no reason to lie, she said, her voice loud enough for onlookers to hear. My father was killed, my entire future stolen. Why would I risk my life coming here unless I speak the truth? The chief's face revealed little, yet some subtle shift in his posture suggested he weighed her words. The old scarred warrior barked another challenge, jabbing a finger in her direction. Again, Samuel answered him, his tone firm but not combative. A short argument ensued with voices rising. Tension crackled like a storm about to break. But then Silver Eagle lifted a hand, silencing the debate. We will hear your tale in full, he declared, gesturing for Anna to join him in the main lodge. If we find truth in your words, you may stay a short time. But if your words are false... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The hush that followed spoke volumes. Anna's heart pounded. She nodded. I understand. As they moved deeper into the encampment, children craned their necks to catch a glimpse of her. A few mothers ushered them back. Other warriors stared with open curiosity or simmering distrust. Throughout it all, she kept close to Samuel, who walked with an air of guarded confidence. She sensed the magnitude of what lay ahead. The truth she offered might be her only currency here, and it had to be enough to convince a community that had every reason to doubt her kind. Inside the lodge, it was dim and smoky from a central fire. Chiefs and elders arranged themselves in a circle, waiting. Silver Eagle took his place among them. One-Eyed Bear glowered at her from across the fire, while Broadfist, an older man wearing a bear claw necklace, met her gaze with less hostility. Samuel gestured for her to sit on a woven mat. This is where I defend not only my life, Anna thought, but also the chance for peace between two worlds. She took a breath, steadying her nerves. My name is Anna Caldwell, she began. I will tell you everything. Anna recounted the story of the wagon train massacre in precise detail. She spoke of how she'd been gathering wood, how masked men in mock native attire ambushed the camp, and how they left no survivors aside from her. Her voice trembled at times, particularly when describing the demise of her father, but she fought to maintain composure. She repeated all the evidence she'd witnessed, the raiders speaking English, discussing how they'd framed the Dakota, bragging about their next planned raid. As she spoke, the ring of elders grew visibly uneasy. Some exchanged grim nods, others frowned deeply. When she mentioned a tall man with red hair and a silver-banded hat, Conrad Davis, the apparent leader, they stirred with recognition. Davis was once a scout for the army, Samuel explained quietly when Anna paused. He's rumored to have turned outlaw for personal gain. He's behind multiple raids, always shifting blame to the tribes. Broadfist rose, addressing the council in Dakota. From his animated gestures, Anna guessed he spoke in her favor. One-Eyed Bear retorted, jabbing his walking stick against the ground. A heated debate ensued, references to stolen goods, murdered relatives, and the endless cycle of reprisals. Finally, Chief Silver Eagle raised a hand for silence. Switching to English, he fixed Anna with a penetrating stare. Your words match stories from our own scouts. Davis leads a band that kills both white settlers and our hunting parties, stirring war between the nations. We have lost much to his deceptions. Anna swallowed. He's not alone. He has a group of at least 10 men, maybe more. They're armed, they have resources, and they know how to exploit people's fears. A ragged hush fell. The elders exchanged grave looks. Silver Eagle spoke again. If your story is true, the soldiers must hear it. The fort near the river, Fort Drake, is commanded by Major Matthew Sheridan. He is a fair man, but also tied by army rules. Will he believe your word or accuse us of lying? One-Eyed Bear barked a sharp comment, eyes locked on Anna. She shivered under his glare. Samuel translated quietly. He says the major might hang us for stepping foot in the fort. He also wonders if you will betray us once you're safe among your own. Anna bristled. Betray you? Why would I do that? I've lost everything because of these men, and they're the same ones stirring hatred against your people. If we don't stop them, no one on either side is safe. Her sincerity seemed to impress at least some of the elders. Murmurs rippled through the circle. Broadfist nodded in approval, but One-Eyed Bear remained unconvinced. The debate resumed. Hours passed with Samuel occasionally updating Anna on the gist of the discussion. The final result. Delivered by Silver Eagle, Anna could remain in the camp temporarily, learning Dakota ways while they evaluated her trustworthiness. The council would decide in a few days whether to send her, and possibly some of their warriors, to Major Sheridan. Weary from stress, Anna followed Samuel to the small lodge they'd been assigned. The interior was sparse, 2 sleeping mats, a central fire pit, and a few clay pots. She sank onto a mat, feeling the weight of the council's scrutiny, the magnitude of the story she carried. For the next few days, it seemed, her life would be under constant observation. If she gained their trust, maybe they'd stand behind her account of Davis's crimes. If not, Samuel inhaled slowly, still ginger from his healing shoulder. It could have gone worse, he remarked. Then they might have refused you entirely. Anna nodded. I'm grateful for the chance, though it feels like walking on thin ice. His lips quirked with a trace of amusement. You get used to it on these plains, being between worlds. Over the following days, she learned that bridging these worlds required constant effort. The tribe was packing up some lodges in preparation for moving camp, as tension with the army and roving outlaws had made their location precarious. Willowsong, a young woman who was Samuel's cousin, took pity on Anna and showed her how to soften deer hides, prepare a meager stew from roots and dried meat, and help with the daily chores that occupied Dakota women. While some turned a cold shoulder, others began to thaw, observing her willingness to labor without complaint. She also discovered that not everyone in camp disliked her. Children often peeked into her lodge, giggling when she tried to pronounce Dakota words. An elderly woman gifted her a tiny carved talisman, pressing it into Anna's hand with an encouraging smile. These gestures felt like small seeds of acceptance, though she sensed the ground was still fragile. Samuel was gone much of the time, meeting with scouts or assisting in hunts. She missed his presence, finding it odd how his silent companionship had become a source of comfort. Meanwhile, the council's deliberations continued, and Anna prayed they would ultimately decide to approach Fort Drake. Each day, the possibility weighed heavier on her heart. If the council said no, her path to justice might close forever. On the 4th day, an alarm rippled through the camp. A lone white man had been caught skulking near the perimeter. Within minutes, warriors dragged him in, bruised, bound, cursing. Anna recognized him, one of Davis's men from that smoky camp. He locked eyes on her, startled. You're still alive? He spat. Wait till Davis hears about this. That outburst recharged the tension. The man boasted that more outlaws awaited orders to raid any redskin camp they found. Furious debate arose among the elders over what to do with the prisoner. In the midst of the uproar, Chief Silver Eagle signaled for Anna. We must decide soon. Davis is near, and we cannot remain in one place. Tomorrow's council will settle everything. Her pulse pounded. She touched the tiny carving in her pocket, feeling a strange sort of resolve. The next day, her fate would be sealed. The council convened at dawn, and Anna stood at the center, flanked by Samuel and Broadfist. She repeated her testimony for those who hadn't heard it in full. A hush settled, broken only by the soft crackle of the lodge's central fire. Finally, Chief Silver Eagle declared, We shall attempt to bring your truth to Major Sheridan at Fort Drake. But be warned, Davis's riders patrol those trails. It is a dangerous route. A mixture of relief and dread washed over Anna. She'd convinced them, yet the path ahead promised confrontation. I'll take that risk, she said, keeping her voice steady, if it means justice for my father, for your people, for everyone who's lost someone to Davis's lies. Easier said than done. That very afternoon, scouts reported Davis's men riding toward the nearest trading post, likely intending to intercept travelers or spread more false rumors of native attacks. Time was of the essence, If Davis reached the fort first with a fabricated story, he'd poison the soldiers' minds or secure an official sanction against the Dakota. The council decided to split. One group would move the camp to a safer location, while a smaller party escorted Anna to Fort Drake. They chose 4 warriors to join her. Lightfoot, a seasoned tracker with gray in his hair. Night Runner, renowned for endurance in long pursuits. Broadfist, who had once served as the chief's right hand. And to Anna's surprise, One-Eyed Bear. The scarred elder had apparently volunteered, citing his knowledge of hidden routes. Samuel, of course, would go too, though she sensed he and One-Eyed Bear didn't fully trust one another. Nonetheless, the group set off at dawn with meager supplies, determined to skirt known roads and avoid any direct clash with the outlaws, unless necessary. The first day passed in tense watchfulness. They traveled through wooded gullies and across streams, rarely speaking above a hushed murmur. Whenever they spotted fresh tracks, Samuel and One-Eyed Bear conferred quietly, deciding whether to shift course. Anna felt the old ache in her feet returning, but Willow Song had gifted her a pair of soft moccasins that made the journey more bearable. As evening fell, they camped in a hollow near a ridge. The conversation turned to strategy. One-Eyed Bear insisted that approaching Fort Drake with so many Dakota warriors might provoke a hostile reception. "We must be wise," Samuel concurred, glancing at Anna. "Maybe just Anna and Broadfist approach, holding a sign of peace." Anna swallowed. "I'll do what's necessary. Major Sheridan said to be fair, but I've never met him. If Davis poisons the well first, he could twist my story." Broadfist placed a hand over the bear claw necklace on his chest. "We must not allow that. We need to intercept Davis, catch him, or at least gather indisputable proof of his crimes." Sparks from the fire drifted skyward like fleeting fireflies as the group debated plans late into the night. The next morning, they discovered fresh hoof prints crossing their route, a band of 15 riders moving swiftly south. Lightfoot scowled, examining the tracks. Davis's men, or an army patrol. Without confirmation, they had to assume the worst. They altered their route again, hugging rough terrain. On the second night, while camped under starlight, they heard distant hoofbeats. Everyone tensed. Then silence. The next morning, they found more prints, deeper ruts indicating riders traveling fast. "They're heading straight for Fort Drake," Night Runner noted grimly. Anna's heart sank. Davis could arrive hours before them. If he delivered a false story of savage attacks, the fort might be alerted to shoot on sight. They quickened their pace. Long hours on horseback left them sore and weary, but urgent determination propelled them forward. Near midday of the third day, they reached a vantage point. From a bluff, they could see dust clouds in the distance. One-Eyed Bear muttered a curse in Dakota. Davis's men, a large group, were indeed riding south. The glint of metal suggested rifles. "They're close to the main trail," Samuel said. "If they get to the fort first, we might face open conflict." Swiftly, they formed a bold plan. Set an ambush in a narrow valley where the main trail forced travelers through a tight choke point. If they could capture Davis alive, they'd have undeniable proof for Major Sheridan. 5 against 15 is madness," Anna blurted. Broadfist's gaze was steady. "We have the advantage of surprise, high ground, and your testimony, but we must act with precision. One bullet in Davis's heart does us no good. He must stand trial." They raced to the valley, ascending rocky slopes to a spot where boulders overlooked the trail. Each took a position, Lightfoot and Night Runner on one ridge, Broadfist and One-Eyed Bear on another. Samuel and Anna waited near the exit of the valley, planning to cut off Davis's retreat. The strategy was to scare the horses with rolling stones, forcing the group into chaos. Then single out Davis. Anna's chest constricted as she crouched behind a fallen log, pistol in hand. She steeled herself. Henry's face flashed in her mind, urging her forward. Minutes later, the distant thunder of hooves signaled Davis's approach. She peeked over the log and spotted him. Tall, red hair, the black hat with a silver band. Her stomach twisted with revulsion. At exactly the right moment, Samuel let out a shrill bird call. Rocks clattered down from the ridges, spooking the horses into frantic rears. Davis's men shouted, tried to regroup. Arrows rained from above, striking non-lethal hits to disable riders. Shrieks of horse and curses of Johanben filled the canyon. Anna's heart pounded. Then she and Samuel charged in from the eastern gap, hoping to seize Davis before he could organize a counterattack. Davis whirled at the commotion, pistol in hand. He fired at Samuel, missing by inches. Anna, trembling but resolute, raised her own gun. Before she could squeeze the trigger, a bullet grazed her forearm, one of Davis's henchmen from behind. She bit back a cry, returning fire. The henchman toppled. Samuel lunged, tackling Davis's horse. Davis tumbled off, landing hard. In a flash, he aimed his pistol at Anna. She fired first, hitting his arm. He roared in pain, dropping his weapon. Then Samuel was on him, wrestling him to the ground. The two men struggled, fists flying. Davis clawed at a hidden knife, but Anna kicked it away. Amid the chaos, the other warriors subdued the remaining outlaws or sent them scurrying in panic. Davis, pinned, spat curses, blood dripping from his wounded arm. "You worthless savage! You're all dead men." Samuel twisted Davis's arm behind his back, securing rope around his wrists. "We'll see who's dead," but he growled. "You'll answer for your crimes." Stunned, exhausted, Anna leaned against the log, pressing a hand to her wounded arm. Glancing around, she saw the others rounding up or chasing off Davis's men. The ambush had worked. Davis was theirs, alive. She exhaled, tears of relief mixing with the pain in her forearm. Perhaps justice, at last, was within reach. By late afternoon, the ambush site lay strewn with scattered gear, wounded bandits, and terrified horses. Those outlaws who managed to flee galloped west, leaving behind their leader and several injured companions. The Dakota warriors swiftly bound the captives, ignoring the men's pleas and threats. Davis slumped against a rock, cursing in a low voice. Blood seeped through the makeshift bandage on his arm. Occasionally, he glared at Anna with pure hatred. She met his gaze without flinching, her battered pistol still in hand. Let him see her resolve. Let him understand she was not the helpless settler's daughter of a week ago. They reorganized with urgency. Night Runner scouted the area, reporting no immediate sign of a second wave of outlaws. Lightfoot and One-Eyed Bear snatched the bandits' rifles, scattering them where they couldn't be used. Broadfist approached Anna, examining her forearm. "Just a graze," he said, relief in his tone. "Can you ride?" She nodded, adrenaline still coursed through her, dulling the ache. She had no intention of staying behind. They placed Davis, cursing and sputtering, on a sturdy horse, ankles tied beneath the belly to prevent escape. Two other bandits, moaning with arrow wounds or bullet grazes, were similarly secured. Samuel insisted they move out quickly. The longer they lingered, the greater the chance of more outlaws arriving. Travel was slow, the captives struggling and occasionally shouting. Anna rode near Davis, pistol in her lap, ensuring he caused no trouble. He spat insults at her, calling her a traitor to her own race, vowing vengeance. Each hateful word only steeled her resolve. She recalled her father's lifeless face in the wreckage of the wagon train. This man was responsible. She told him so, describing Henry Caldwell's gentleness. It earned her only a sneer. By dawn of the next day, they neared Fort Drake's perimeter. A bugle call rang from the ramparts as soon as the riders were spotted. Soldiers ran to the walls, muskets bristling. The Dakota slowed their mounts, forming a tight formation with Anna in the lead. She raised her free hand, hoping to show they came in peace. To Anna's relief, an officer in dark blue uniform rode out with a small entourage. He had silver at his temples and a firm posture that spoke of long military service. Major Matthew Sheridan, presumably. He halted a dozen yards from them, eyes flickering over the unusual party. A battered white woman, armed Dakota warriors, and bound men with bloody bandages. "Identify yourselves," he commanded, hand on his holstered pistol. Anna summoned all her composure. "My name is Anna Caldwell, Major. I survived a massacre on the Shallow Creek wagon train. These men," she pointed to Davis and his goons, "are the ones who did it. They disguised themselves as natives, stirring war. I have Dakota allies here who've also suffered from their raids." A hush fell as the Major studied them. He nodded toward Davis. "That man's Conrad Davis, once an Army scout, rumored to have gone rogue. You say he's behind these recent attacks?" "Yes," Anna said firmly. "He's been pitting settlers and tribes against each other for profit. I saw it with my own eyes. So did these warriors, and Davis is wounded but alive. He can be questioned." Davis spat. "Lies, Major. She's been brainwashed by these savages." But Sheridan's gaze was clinical, assessing. He shifted in the saddle. "We've heard conflicting reports of Indian raids. And we've also heard rumors of men masquerading as tribes to provoke violence. We are not inclined to dismiss your claim out of hand." He gestured to one of his men. "Corporal, take these prisoners into custody. We'll get them in irons." Samuel tensed, as if unsure whether the soldiers would turn on them next. Anna steadied her breath, hoping her testimony in the presence of the captured criminals would sway the major. Sheridan addressed Samuel. "You have my word that we'll not fire on you if you come peacefully. I must, however, insist you disarm within the fort walls." After a brief exchange in Dakota among the warriors, they agreed. One-Eyed Bear removed the arrow from his bow. Broadfist surrendered his rifle, all while Sheridan's men watched closely. Step by step, they entered the fort's gates together, an unlikely procession. Soldiers gawked at Anna's ragged attire in the sight of multiple Dakota riding in side by side. In the courtyard, the tension was palpable, but Sheridan dismounted and escorted them personally toward the central barracks. "We'll get you medical attention, Miss Caldwell," he said, glancing at her arm. "And you," he addressed the Dakota, "will have a chance to speak your truth. I recognize Chief Silver Eagle's mark on that necklace," he added, noticing the totem Anna wore. "He and I have corresponded before. I'm inclined to believe there's more to this than meets the eye." Relief flooded her, though caution remained. She needed to ensure Davis wouldn't wriggle free through bribes or bureaucratic red tape. "Thank you, Major," she answered. "I'm ready to give a full statement. And these men," she gestured to the warriors, "they have testimonies of their own. Conrad Davis can't talk his way out of every piece of evidence." Sheridan nodded briskly. "Then let's get started. If he's as guilty as you say, we'll see him tried." As they moved inside, Davis's snarling curses echoed behind them. Anna closed her eyes for a moment, releasing a silent prayer of thanks to whomever might listen, for leading her here, for giving her the strength to endure, and for guiding her to allies in the unlikeliest of places. 3 weeks passed in a blur of interrogations, written depositions, and tense discussions with Fort Drake's officers. Major Sheridan proved methodical, gathering facts with a legal precision. Davis, once the terror of the plains, found himself in chains in a makeshift jail, his wounded arm healing poorly under the care of indifferent medics. One by one, the captured bandits cracked under formal questioning, revealing more details of their raids, how they pinned blame on natives, and how they sold stolen goods at unscrupulous trading posts. Each day, Anna repeated her story, urging Sheridan to contact other witnesses, trappers, travelers, who might corroborate the outlaws' activities. Samuel Redleaf and the Dakota warriors offered their perspectives too, describing the brutal attacks on their hunting parties. Sheridan's command staff initially eyed them with distrust, but evidence mounted. Stolen items from both settler wagons and tribal camps were found stashed in Davis's hidden caches. Slowly, the picture of a widespread conspiracy emerged, and with it, official condemnation of Davis and his men. Anna's role as a key witness made her something of a curiosity in the fort. Soldiers wondered aloud how she managed to survive the massacre and then ally with the Dakota. Some admired her grit, others viewed her with suspicion, as if she no longer belonged fully to the settler world. Regardless, she was integral to the Army's case, and Sheridan treated her with guarded respect, determined to see justice done. At last, with official testimonies signed and the bandits' confessions sealed, Sheridan announced that Davis would be sent east for trial before a territorial judge. The fort's blacksmith fashioned sturdier irons. A detail of cavalrymen would escort him to ensure he couldn't escape. For Anna, that meant the day of reckoning was finally at hand. The man who orchestrated her father's death would face public accountability. She could almost feel Henry's presence, imagining how he'd have championed truth and fairness, even for a man as vile as Davis. But now, as the dust began to settle, a new question loomed. What next? She had no wagon train, no living kin out west, and no desire to return to Ohio with her father gone. Major Sheridan offered to arrange transport east, but the idea filled her with hollow dread. She realized she had changed too much to simply slide back into polite society. She had tasted the gritty reality of survival on the plains, formed a bond with the Dakota, and proven to herself that she was far stronger than she once believed. One crisp morning, she found Samuel by the fort's corral, his bandaged shoulder largely healed. He was adjusting the saddle on a borrowed horse, face pensive. "So," he said, noticing her approach, "your testimony is done, Davis is shackled. You are free to choose your path. She tried to read his expression. Was there relief, sadness, or simply the stoicism she'd come to expect? Yes, Sheridan asked if I'd travel with them to the court hearing, but it might take months. I'm not sure that's my calling. A pause hovered. Chief Silver Eagle wants me to return to the band with news of how this all ended. But the major also asked me to serve as a scout and translator, bridging communication with different tribes. Samuel replied, 2 roles, 2 worlds. Anna inhaled. That's precisely how I feel. I have nowhere obvious to go, but I've seen how distrust grows without voices to correct lies. Part of me wants to keep traveling these lands, telling the truth about what nearly consumed us all. Another part, she trailed off, uncertain how to phrase it. He looked at her intently. Another part wants what? She took a steadying breath. To be near the only people who've ever truly seen me as I am now, you, Chief Silver Eagle's band. I can't imagine stepping into a church social in Ohio and acting as though none of this happened. I'd rather stay and help ensure no more wagon trains are slaughtered, no more tribes are falsely blamed. Samuel's eyes flicked to the horizon. Building peace on the frontier is a hard path. Are you sure you want it? A faint smile tugged at her lips. My father used to say that the hardest paths are often the most important. I think he'd be pleased if I tried to heal some of the damage men like Davis have caused. He nodded gravely, then extended a hand. She placed hers in it, finding warmth and acceptance in that simple gesture. Then perhaps we walk that path together, he said softly. I have scars from what came before, but if someone stands beside me who understands both worlds, maybe we can prevent future bloodshed. Anna closed her fingers around his. I'd like that. They walked from the corral side by side, the morning sun casting elongated shadows. Soldiers saluted them in passing, and a few Dakota warriors outside the fort gate looked on with guarded approval. Both sets of eyes bore witness to something new, a bridging of divides once thought irreconcilable. Days later, Anna stood on a hilltop behind the fort, gazing at the vast plains. She could hardly see the wagon train carnage without recalling the nightmares, nor could she stand by a Dakota campfire without feeling pangs of guilt for the harm done by her own people. Yet, the horizon held promise. In a land battered by cruelty and deception, she and Samuel had forged a shared commitment to truth. She touched the bear claw necklace around her neck, her own quiet vow to carry strength within. Though the memory of Henry's death would always hurt, she felt him near, guiding her through each purposeful step. The frontier remained dangerous, but for the first time since the Massacres, she believed in a future where alliances could transcend old hatreds. She believed in building a new story, one crafted from the ashes of tragedy, one that might inspire others to see beyond fear, to find common ground where none seemed possible. So she and Samuel Redleaf set forth, bridging worlds with every decision, forging trust out of suspicion. Their story would spread among forts, tribes, and settlers, reminding all who heard it that justice and understanding could arise from even the darkest corners of the plains. And as the wind carried the echo of hoofbeats across the rolling grass, Anna Caldwell turned her face to the endless sky, ready for whatever trials the horizon might bring. Looking back on our journey, it's astonishing how a lone survivor's raw determination intertwined with a Dakota hunter's quiet strength to unravel a deadly conspiracy. Through frigid nights, fierce battles, and uneasy truces, they proved that empathy can bridge the deepest divides. Now the outlaws have been brought to justice, and the flames of hatred have begun to die down, leaving in their wake a cautious new respect between worlds that once stood apart. From my perspective, nothing resonates more than witnessing how common ground is born out of shared hardships. Now that you've heard our tale, we'd love to hear your voice. Did a particular moment spark your imagination? Which character's resilience inspired you the most? Share your thoughts, and let's keep the conversation lively. Let's celebrate the power of hope and unity in the toughest places. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for more stories that remind us how courage can blossom in the most unexpected ways.